You may ask, how did this tradition get started? I'll tell you. I don't know. But it's a tradition. And because of our traditions, every one of us knows who he is and what God expects him to do.
Day and night must scramble for a
Let's talk Torah. I am Rabbi Tzvi Jacobson with NRM Streamcast, and we'll spend our time talking Torah, learning stuff, and having fun while we learn. You can always send your questions and comments to our mailbag at letstalktorah@gmail.com, and of course I will answer as many as I can. Or you can go to our webpage at letstalktorah.net. That's letstalktorah.net. Go to the archives, the new shows, old shows. That's what archives means. Questions, comments, and of course the all-important donate button, which, as we remind you, when you press that button, you turn us into millionaires, and we appreciate that. And if you really use the donate button properly, and you help the show, you help us cover our expenses here in these beautiful studios of NRM Streamcast, that will be greatly appreciated so that we continue to do what we do so well over here. Also, we are top 10 in FeedSpot's 10 best Jewish book podcasts. We are at number 5. So this week's Torah portion, it's the largest Torah portion by itself. Sometimes the double Torah portion, that's a little bit bigger, but 176 verses. Lots of stuff, and of course we will only touch on a few things. But something that's later in the Torah portion, I'm not sure how much time we'll have for it, but I think it's a good attitude to start with. So later in the Torah portion, we learn about the priestly blessings. In other words, in the temple, the priests, the Kohanim, would bless the Jewish people every day. The famous Yivrecha Hashem Yishmerecha, Yer Hashem Panav Elecha V'Chuneka, Yisrael Hashem Panav Elecha V'Sevach Shalom. In Israel, in Jerusalem, it's done every day. Outside of Israel, it's done on the holidays. Like we just finished the holidays, and sure enough, the priests will go up and they will bless everyone with these 3 blessings. It is interesting. We're not going to get into it. In the temple, in the Beis Hamikdash, it was like one long blessing. While we look at it as 3 separate blessings, we say Amen 3 times. There's a little blessing, a little prayer we say beforehand about dreams. But anyways, if you look at the end of the blessing, it talks about peace, right? That God will give us peace, will make peace. And it also says that after the priests, after the Kohanim will bless us, then God tells the priests, you bless the Jewish people and I will bless them. Well, hello, right? Any blessing that we're going to get from anybody at the end of the day is anyways only coming from God, right? So the priests have no power to do anything. If God wants to bless me, he will, and the opposite would be true as well. So Shimon Sefer says like this. He says, there are people out there. They are rich. They are healthy. They have all the good you can imagine. But some of those people, they have, I would say, rose-colored lenses. But they don't see the world the way we see the world. Everything is bad. Everything is a problem. Everything is a complaint. There's always something missing, right? You talk about the cup half full, cup half empty. You can pick and choose what you want. I can wake up in the morning. I can look out my back window. Beautiful weather, healthy children, thank God. I have a roof over my head. I have 2 cars that still work. Life is great. Life is just fantastic. It's a mnemonic that I have written down. The word chacham, wise man, can be read as chatzi kais mole. The cup is half full. Right? So the blessing is, and I can tell you another story just to remind myself of, the blessing is that God will make us feel that we're being blessed. I told my class today, we were talking about how when the Jewish people were by the Red Sea and they were being chased by Pharaoh, some people prayed, some people wanted to fight, some people wanted to give up, and some people complained. But in the complaint, they just keep like piling on stuff that doesn't even make sense. So I told the boys in my class, I said, we do this all the time. Right? Whenever we complain about something, especially people that are complainers. So it doesn't matter that, I gave an example. I said, a boy will come to me and beg, please change my seat. I hate my seat. I can't sit there. It's the worst seat in the world. I can't learn there. I can't study there. You must change my seat. Okay. And I also teach my boys, you should be careful what you ask for. Because sometimes you'll get exactly what you wanted. And then you'll find out you didn't want that. And then sure enough, 2 days later, after the boy changed his seat, oh, I have to go back to my old seat. I said, your old seat? You told me your old seat was terrible. You hated that seat. No, my old seat was fine. This is a terrible seat. I can't sit here. I need my old seat back, which I'm not always ready to move him back so fast. That's what complainers do. Right? That's like the life of the complainer. But the story is told of a rabbi is in his village, and the water carrier is schlepping his buckets. You know, he makes us a few pennies for delivering a bucket of water here, a bucket of water there. And the rabbi sees him and he says, how are things, Beryl? Terrible. My bones are creaking and I'm working so hard and my back is broken and I make a few pennies. It's terrible. I don't make any money and have no future. What's going to be? A couple weeks later, again he sees Beryl singing a tune as he's carrying his buckets of water. Hey, Beryl, how are you? I'm great. Sun is shining. I'm strong. I can earn a living. What's the complaint? Right? In other words, the same story, the same situation. But what's your attitude? How do you look at it? Do you look at it that things are great? Or do you look at it that life is not the way you would like it because you're a complainer? It's an interesting thought. Okay, so let's get into some of the topics, commands, mitzvos in this week's Torah portion. So, there is a command, there's a mitzvah called Vidui Meiser. So, let's explain each part of this statement. So, we are commanded, farmers, if you're a farmer, that when he brings in the harvest, so he has to give 2% to the Kohen, to the priest, 10% to the Levite. Of that 10%, the Levite in turn has to give 10% of what he got to the Kohen. Then, depending on the year of the Shemitah cycle, either he separates 10% and he'll bring that up to Jerusalem, or he redeems it and brings the money up to Jerusalem to eat. And every third and sixth year in the Shemitah cycle, the 10% goes to the poor. That's the basic gist of Meisers. Now, you would imagine that, most years there's the Kohen will come and collect, the Levite will come and collect, the poor person will come and collect, but it is possible that a person still has some of these tithes, some of the Trumas and Meisers are stored away, and he never had a chance to clean out the storage house. So, twice in 7 years, so after 3 years, which is Passover the fourth year, and then in the sabbatical year again, by Passover, he's going to make a declaration. He's going to say that, God, I gave my tithing properly. I gave my tithing properly, and therefore you, God, have to shower your blessing on me. So it's interesting, a boy in class says to me that, we don't announce, look how great I am, I did my command, I did what you said, God, you have to be good to me back. So this boy had difficulty with this concept. I said, in general, you're right. And it happens to be fascinating that when it comes to charity, that's not the rule. When it comes to charity, you can actually tell God, look, I gave charity. God, I need you to take care of me. I need you to help me out. And it even says you can test God for this and give charity so that God will take care of whatever I'm looking for, whatever I need. And then I told him a fascinating story that I just read. I don't want to call it hot off the press, but it was a story that I just read about the power of kindness and charity. So the story goes with Michal Yehuda Lefkowitz. He was a great rabbi in Israel, really in Bnei Brak, and he was the head of a school. He was a yeshiva. He had authored many, many Torah volumes, and he got sick. And he went to the first doctor, second doctor, third doctor, and they were all saying the same thing. He had some type of growth that had to be cut out, but it was a very delicate surgery, and his life would be totally changed after the surgery. As he would be able to lecture, he would be able to write all his books. He would, he'd be alive, but it wouldn't be the same kind of life. And he felt terrible about this. So he went to the next doctor, they all said the same thing. He felt terrible. I mean, what are you going to do? You have to take the surgery, but that his whole life will now, he won't be able to teach, he won't have the students, he won't be able to write. Like, this troubled him. And then one day on Shabbos, he comes down to his family and he says, everything's going to be fine. So, how do you know everything's going to be fine? I had a dream. So before we go into the dream, you have to know this Michal Yehuda Lefkowitz had a rabbi that his goal, his dream was to emulate this person. He was known as the Tzaddik of Jerusalem. Actually, I wrote a report, I think in 8th grade. It was in my in our yearbook. I wrote a report on this special person. His name was Rabbi Levine. And, it's interesting. As an 8th grader, there are things you take from the book. What I took, I still say it today. This has nothing to do with the story. But he had this catchphrase that a person will keep your secret as well as you did, which I find whoa, right? You couldn't hold on to your secret. Why do you think your friend that you just told the secret to is going to be better than you? If it's a secret, don't tell anybody. But anyways, that's totally separate. This Rabbi Levine was famous. He was the rabbi of the prisoners. This was when the British mandate was in Israel, and there were all the political prisoners and other prisoners, and he would visit them every Shabbos. He'd walk in, and we've told you stories in the past how he would find ways to get in even when they didn't want to let him in, and he did it for free. He also, these were the days where they had hospitals with lepers, right? Somebody that had the leprosy. And the doctors would warn him, it's very contagious and we can't protect you from it. You shouldn't go too close to them. And he went in, he would hug them and he would take care of them. He said, I'm doing Bikur Chayim. I'm visiting the sick. God's going to take care of me. And he never got sick. Certainly not these diseases. Anyways, so this Rabbi Michal Yehuda, he wanted to emulate, and he did the same thing. He would visit hospitals. So one time he's in a hospital, and he hears from the next room, there's a groaning. Somebody groaning. He goes in, he sees a person in his stomach. I'm sorry, he wasn't in a hospital, he was in a nursing home. And he says to the person, what's the matter? He says, I need to go to the hospital. So he says, so the nursing home, why aren't they sending you to the hospital? Now, I don't know all the details why things worked this way in those days, but this is the way it was. So the nursing home said, it's my children's responsibility to pay the hospital. My children say, it's the nursing home's responsibility to pay the hospital. Nobody wants to pay, so they're not taking me to the hospital. So this Michal Yehuda said, that's ridiculous. So he made a call, to the hospital, get an ambulance. What's it going to cost? 300 lira. Okay, so obviously a long time ago when the lira was the coin in Israel. Now, he only earned 500 lira a month, and he was barely making it by on that. But he said this person must go to the hospital, and no one's paying. He paid himself. And the person went to the hospital, came back. This went on like every month. He had to go back to the hospital, and every month he came in, he paid that bill. However many months it went on, probably children got a little bit embarrassed that their father's hospital bill was being paid by some rabbi. So the children finally agreed to foot the bill. That was the old story. One of. So that Shabbos, this person came to Rav Michal Yehuda and said to him in the dream, he says, I don't know if you remember me, but many years ago, a person who you didn't know, that you saw was suffering in the nursing home, and you paid his doctor bills. I went up before God, and I said, God, this person who took care of me didn't even know who I was. And he took care of me, and you're going to make him suffer from this surgery? So you're going to have the surgery. Everything's going to go smooth. You're going to go back to your regular teaching, taking care of the students, writing your books. Everything's going to be fantastic. Sure enough, he went through the surgery. After the surgeries, the doctor said, I don't know, we thought it was going to be way more difficult, but when we opened you up, we saw very simple stuff had to be done, and you should have a full recovery. You're going to be totally back to normal. And so he was. Now, it is interesting, just one more point about this, what we call this Vidui Meiser. There is one more interesting point, and that is that even though there's this mitzvah to go ahead and proclaim, and I explained to my class, when there is a command to proclaim that you did something, you're going to make sure you do it. Because if you don't do it, you can't make the proclamation. And everybody made the proclamation. I mean, everybody who could. So you're not going to embarrass yourself that you're the guy, right, that didn't fulfill his requirements. However, by the beginning of the Second Temple, they no longer said this proclamation. What happened? What happened was the Jewish people after the First Temple were in exile in Babylonia, Persia, and the great Ezra Sefer brought the Jewish people back to rebuild the temple. There were already some Jews back in Israel. They had tried starting to build a temple that was stopped by Achashverosh. That's the Purim story. But Ezra was allowed to go back. Only 42,000 Jews went back with him. And he realized as they were coming back, there was no one from the tribe of Levi. He had priests, he had Kohanim. But the Levites, there were none. So as a punishment, he declared that when you take the 10%, when the farmer takes his 10%, what we call Meiser Rishon, when the farmer takes his 10% and it's supposed to be given to Levi, technically, you could give it to a Kohen, because a Kohen is from the tribe of Levi. You're not supposed to. You're supposed to give it to the Levite. But he said, from now on, you can give it to the Kohen. So that meant that many people were no longer giving the Trumas and Maestris the way the Torah wants. So you can't make the proclamation. He changed the rules. But included in this change of rules is you can no longer make the proclamation. Okay, so goes life. That was the rule that was created. Okay. Now we want to get into another part of the Torah portion. We're going to start it now, but I don't think we're going to finish it till we get into the next show. So we're going to give it a start, and we're going to try to bring out some very important points. In Hebrew, the word is a sota. The word sota itself is difficult how you exactly translate. But whatever it is, this is a woman who we suspect that she committed adultery. Let's go through the laws, right? If there's witnesses and she was warned, then there's a death penalty. If there's witnesses and she was not warned, then she'll separate from her husband, she'll leave her husband. But let's say there's no witnesses. Now, if there's no witnesses, what right do you have to suspect? So there's actually a very interesting set of rules that happens. The Torah says that the husband will get this spirit of jealousy. He's going to realize something's going on. It doesn't go in both directions, by the way. Adultery means that a married woman is sleeping with another man. But a man, even if he's married, he can have more than one wife. So it doesn't really, unless she's also married. That's a different issue. We're talking about the lady. So the husband suspects. So he tells his wife in front of witnesses, you cannot be alone with that person. That's what she says. That's what he says to his wife. If she is alone with him, and we have witnesses, she was alone. The witnesses didn't see anything. Went into her house, closed the door. That's all we know. If we know more than that, the rules change. So she goes alone with this man. The witnesses will come back, and the husband now has to bring his wife up to the temple. This is something that only took place during the time of the temple, and even during the second temple, already it was they put an end to it. If you look at the language of the verse says, ish ish, like a man. His wife will go astray. So some commentaries say it started with the husband. He was just not nice. He was mean. He was unyielding. He wasn't soft. He did not honor his wife. He created strife in the house. So she wants a way out. Okay. Now, what happens is now you have to understand, God wants the Jewish people to be pure. Part of being pure is that the children are born from this marriage of a husband and wife. Not where there's a third party over here. That takes away from the purity of the Jewish people. So the Torah is very involved. The Torah is very involved that we know who the father of every child is. It's a big deal. It's a big deal. There's a lot of rules and regulations for this. So the husband's going to bring his wife to the temple. And, of course, they ask her first to admit. Just tell us what really happened. If you really slept with a guy, okay, you have to get divorced from your husband. You won't get the ketubah, and you'll live. She doesn't want to admit. First of all, it's probably very, very embarrassing. And perhaps she didn't do anything wrong. Now, let's understand. Her husband said, don't go alone with that guy. It's not appropriate. It is not, I don't say not nice. It's really has to be much stronger than that. But a husband and wife have a good relationship. She should not be alone with other men. Like, let's not fool ourselves. What happens when people are alone, right? We're not fools. So she shouldn't even be there. So she's already, crossed the line. But either she didn't do anything wrong, or she's embarrassed to admit. So we tell her, look, if you don't admit, the Kohen has to tell her this, if you don't admit, we have to give you this bitter water to drink. We're going to take water from the wash basin, from the kier where they wash their hands. They're going to take the Torah portion, that writes about this, and we're going to have to rewrite it because we have to use an ink that erases into water. We're going to erase it into the water, and then maybe we're going to put in some other bitter, you know what? The music's playing. So you're just going to have to listen to the next show so we can get clear into what this story is about this wayward wife. So the music playing. I hope you enjoyed it. Short and sweet. Thank you, of course, to my wonderful sponsors and listeners. You know we can't do without you. Thank you to the production team. We have Alan in the back. I hope I've left you some food for thought. Until next time, I am Rabbi Tzvi Jacobson. You've been listening to Let's Talk Torah on NRM Streamcast. Until next time, don't forget to think about it.
There's a house we can build. Every room inside is filled with things from far away. Special